Most people look at gray, cracked wood and assume one thing. It's finished. A deck that has turned silver from the sun. A fence that looks like it survived a war. Furniture so dry it feels like cardboard. The common advice? Sand it, stain it, or replace it. Contractors will tell you the same thing. Wood that weathered this badly needs serious work? And serious work usually comes with a serious bill: $800 for a deck restoration, $400 for a furniture refinish, thousands for replacing a fence. But here's the strange part. Long before power sanders, long before polyurethane, long before modern hardware stores even existed, craftsmen already had a liquid that could restore. Would almost instantly, not paint that hides damage, not stain that sits on the surface. A liquid that actually soaks inside the wood and rebuilds it from within. The ingredients? 3 simple things you can buy almost anywhere. Together, they cost less than $2 per use. And once you understand what this mixture does to wood, you'll never look at weathered timber the same way again. But to understand why this works so well, we need to go back nearly 200 years. The accident that changed would finish in the mid-1800s. A British inventor named Frederick Walton noticed something unusual in his workshop. He had left a container of linseed oil open overnight. By morning, a strange rubbery film had formed on the surface. It wasn't sticky like fresh oil. It was solid, flexible, almost like plastic. Walton realized the oil had reacted with oxygen in the air and hardened naturally. Today, scientists call this process oxidative polymerization. But in the 1860s, it looked like magic. Walton refined the process and eventually invented linoleum, the first large-scale floor covering made mostly from oxidized linseed oil. But craftsmen already knew something Walton was just rediscovering. Linseed oil had been protecting wood for thousands of years. A secret older than civilization. Plant that produces linseed oil is flax. Humans have been growing flax since ancient times in Mesopotamia. Archaeologists even discovered linen cloth in ancient Egypt that survived more than 4,000 years. But flax had another secret. When its seeds were pressed, they produced a golden oil that did something remarkable. When rubbed into wood, the oil soaked deep into the grain and hardened over time. Instead of forming a surface coating like paint, it became part of the wood itself. Ancient Chinese woodworkers used it on furniture, medieval European. Builders coated doors and beams with it. Shipbuilders used it on wooden decks crossing the Atlantic Ocean. And some cathedral doors treated with linseed oil in the 1500s still stand today. But then something changed. When chemistry replaced tradition in the 20th century, the chemical industry introduced new finishes: polyurethane, synthetic varnishes, industrial lacquers. These coatings were shiny. They dried quickly, and most importantly, they were extremely profitable. Companies like Sherwin-Williams and 3 Meters began dominating the finishing market with branded products. But these new coatings had a weakness. They sit on top of wood like plastic. Once the surface cracks, moisture sneaks underneath. The finish peels. And suddenly the wood looks worse than before, which means the homeowner must buy another product or hire a contractor again and again and again. Meanwhile, the old linseed oil method quietly faded from everyday knowledge, not because it stopped working, but because no company could patent it. What actually happens inside the wood to understand why this old mixture works so well? You need to look at wood under a microscope. Wood isn't solid. It's made of millions of tiny tubes that once carried water inside a living tree. When wood dries out in the sun, those tubes empty, the fibers shrink, the surface turns gray and brittle. Now imagine pouring linseed oil onto that dry structure. Because the oil molecules are small and flexible, they travel deep into those empty tubes. Then oxygen in the air triggers a reaction. The fatty acids inside the oil, begin linking together. Chemists call this cross-linking. The oil slowly transforms into a flexible, natural resin. That resin fills the pores inside the wood. Fibers. Suddenly, the wood regains moisture resistance and flexibility. It's like rehydrating the structure from within. But linseed oil alone works slowly, which is where the other two ingredients come in. The three-ingredient formula, the mixture that craftsmen often used, included three simple components. 1. Boiled linseed oil, the main protective ingredient. Boiled linseed oil contains drying catalysts that allow it to harden much faster than raw oil. Instead of taking weeks, it can cure within 24 to 48 hours. 2. White vinegar. This might sound strange, but vinegar contains acetic acid, a mild, natural solvent. It dissolves oxidation, dirt, and dead surface fibers. That gray layer on old wood. Much of it disappears when vinegar breaks it down. 3. Turpentine. Turpentine is distilled from pine tree resin. It works as a natural thinner. When mixed with linseed oil, it reduces viscosity so the oil can penetrate deeper and faster. Without turpentine, oil tends to sit on the surface. With it, the oil flows deep into the wood grain. When these three ingredients combine, something interesting happens. The vinegar cleans, the turpentine carries the oil into the grain, and the linseed oil polymerizes into a protective structure. The wood darkens slightly, regains color, and begins resisting moisture again, all from ingredients that cost almost nothing. The real cost difference let. Compare numbers. Professional deck refinishing often costs between $900 and $2,000. Furniture restoration can range from $300 to $800. Hardwood floor refinishing often costs $3 to $7 per square foot. Meanwhile, the DIY mixture uses materials that are extremely inexpensive. A quart of linseed oil, a small can of turpentine, a bottle of vinegar. Each container lasts for many applications. The cost per project. Often just a few dollars, of course. Professionals charge for labor and expertise. But many homeowners never realize that the core chemistry of wood restoration can be incredibly simple. The safety rule most people forget before anyone rushes to try this method. There is one critical safety rule. Rags soaked in linseed oil can spontaneously combust. This happens because the oil generates heat while oxidizing. If oily rags are crumpled together, the heat cannot escape. Eventually, the temperature can rise enough to ignite the cloth. A famous example occurred during the One Meridian Plaza fire, where improperly stored oily materials contributed to the disaster. So whenever you use linseed oil, always lay used rags flat outdoors to dry. Or place them in water inside a sealed metal container. Never leave them piled together indoors. This single rule prevents most accidents. How to make the mixture. The preparation is simple. Combine equal parts of boiled linseed oil, white distilled vinegar, turpentine. Pour them into a jar with a tight lid. Shake vigorously for about 30 seconds. The liquid should turn slightly cloudy. That means the ingredients are mixed. How to apply it. First, remove loose dirt from the wood using a brush. No sanding is required for most weathered surfaces. Dip a clean cotton cloth into the mixture. Then rub it along the grain of the wood. Work in small sections so the liquid spreads evenly. Allow the wood to absorb the mixture for 10 to 15 minutes. Then wipe away excess oil with a dry cloth. After 24 hours, apply a second coat for deeper protection. That's it. No complicated equipment. No specialized tools. Just a simple process used by woodworkers for generations. Where it works best. This mixture can work well on many types of wood surfaces. Outdoor decks, weathered fences, garden furniture, interior tables and cabinets. It often enhances the grain on darker woods like oak, cedar, walnut, and redwood. Lighter woods may develop a slight warm tint over time. Some people actually prefer that look because it highlights the grain pattern. The lesson? It's hidden in old knowledge. The real story here isn't just about wood. It's about how knowledge changes over time. Many traditional techniques were incredibly effective. But as industries evolve, newer products and systems replace older methods. Sometimes the new solutions are genuinely better. Other times, they are simply easier to manufacture or market. That doesn't mean the older knowledge disappears forever. It just becomes less widely known. Every generation rediscovers pieces of it, and sometimes those rediscoveries remind us that simple solutions can still be powerful. Final thought: that gray piece of wood outside your house might not be ruined. It might simply be dry, and wood that dried out can often come back to life with the right treatment. For centuries, craftsmen understood something modern homeowners often forget. Wood is not dead material. It's a natural structure that can still absorb, react, and change. Sometimes all it takes is a little oil, a little chemistry, and the willingness to try a method that people used long before modern marketing existed.